Hi, it's Ray from Proshaper Sheet Metal. Remember me? I've been away for 10 weeks. I had bronchitis. Just wouldn't quit. Kept going on and on and on. And I still cough. I probably could have done videos, but I'd be coughing through the whole way, and Mark would have to edit that all out. So I feel pretty good now. My energy level is up, and we're back to the longest build of an aluminum hood ever. It seems like that way, but it really isn't. It's just a few hours here and a few hours there, but I'm showing all the details. So here is where we're at now. Mark can pan over here. This was panel 9. We finished up. Of course, it's not welded. When it gets welded, this will all go down like that. Right now, there's a little tension holding that up like that until it gets welded. This seam will actually hold it down. These joggles have to be reworked a little bit. The flange I put in there initially, it's supposed to have a little negative angle in. I'll do that later when I get this welded together. Right now we're going to concentrate on panel 10, which is this one here. These other two panels I'll do off camera. They're just repeats of 9 and 10. And after I get this panel done, then we'll weld this together, and I'll get that side 9 and 10 done also, get that welded together, and then we'll have an assembly here, an assembly there, and we will weld this to the center section, and then that to the center section, and then we'll have this all covered, and last will be the welding of this here to that assembly. So tonight we're doing panel 10, which has these louvers, and these are 8-inch louvers. I don't know if you've watched my video, but probably in the last 3 months or so, we took a pile of scrap metal with my volunteer Frank Miller, and we've created a really nice louver press. And check out that video. It's only a phone video. It's not as high as quality as this camera video, but we did an initial little 3-inch louver die, and we have to make the 8-inch louver die. That'll come later. And but right now we'll make this as a flat panel, and we'll put those louvers in after we get the die done, and that'll be a little while before we do that. So first thing we're going to do is, this panel has a lot less going on than this panel. This turned out to be a really complicated panel. It's probably the most complicated panel in this whole assembly. These front ones with this roll here are pretty complicated, but this reverse curve where it's turning this way, and you've got an arc going that way and an arc going that way, it's pretty complicated to get it done right. So all of these panels need a little tweaking here and there. I'm doing them on camera. After I get them welded together, then I will really nitpick them and fix any little tiny flaws that are in it. And first thing we're going to do is take a look at this panel number 10, and you can see, if you look at panel number 9, there's quite a bit of roll there. Here, there's only a little bit. When you put it up here, actually in the valley, there's only about 3/16 of an inch of rock here with a straight edge. Up here, you have about 1/4 of an inch or so. So you have a situation here where you have a reverse curve, meaning one curve is going this way and the other curve is going the opposite direction, like that. But into this section of the panel, you got a curve going this way and then a curve going this way. So this is a standard compound in here, and this is a reverse right in this little swath here. And this is almost dead flat right here, and it's got a little roll going that way. So this panel should be a lot easier to do. I don't know if I'll get it done tonight, but we'll work on it for 45 minutes or so, and if we have to go into 10B, we'll go 10B. So it's a raw edge on the back. You would think they would have put a hem on there to strengthen it up a little bit, but it's just a raw edge. And of course we have this 1-inch flange going in at an angle like this. It's not 90 degrees, it's probably 70 degrees or 60 degrees or something like that, where it butts up against the fender. And we're going to make the panel with no louvers on it, so we won't be able to marry the new panel onto the top like we did with this one. See, this is just laying on top. It's one thickness removed. So I've made, Mark has made the flexible shape pattern, and we got the blank over here, and we'll go to the blank, and we've got a good amount of extra all around. A lot of this extra is going to be taken up by the flange. I really probably made a mistake here. When I cut this, I should have left a lot extra here, which allows me to bend this. And I think I've mentioned before, this is this Chinese source 3003 063 aluminum, and this stuff is bulletproof. I've talked to a few other shaper friends of mine, and they're using it too, and they can't believe how tough it is to work with. And I hate to anneal it. If I anneal it, it kind of goes all wonky on you, so I'll suffer through it. But I do like the result after you're done. When you're done, the panel is quite substantial. It's got a lot of great dent resistance. We're doing a combination of shrinking and stretching on all these panels, so we're not thinning the panels out quite a bit. So the dent resistance is quite good. The weight, you know, that a lot of times people make aluminum nose for an E-type because they want to reduce the weight by 100 pounds or 150 pounds or whatever. That's really not the issue here. It's that I just love aluminum. I think the aluminum look, if you leave it bare on the inside, it's going to look really nice. You're probably going to paint it. At some point it would be painted. So once it's painted, you really don't know whether it's aluminum or steel. And if this was meant to be for a race car, you could make this out of 40 thousandths or 50 thousandths, which is a lot more malleable. And I think I've mentioned that the people around the world, there's probably a half a dozen different Jag specialists that make these E-type nose as a part of their enterprise. A lot of them will have a fiberglass buck that's a full surface buck that's one thickness removed, and that allows them to put the panel on here, and like for instance this one here, and they want to tweak this radius, they can hammer form that in with a leather slapper, and it's a big advantage. It allows them to place all the joggling. A lot of times they'll actually hand work the joggling in right here, and then they'll clean it up with a little press or a pull max or something later, or a bead roller. One cough. So the situation we have with this panel is we've got the flexible shape pattern, and now the flexible shape pattern usually gives you a really good view of what to do. Here was the number 9 flexible shape pattern. The number 9 flexible shape pattern has a lot more area change in it, and you can see it's kind of puffy over here, puffy all along this. So that gives you the idea right away that you're going to have to add area in that little stretch right there, and you know you have to stay away from that reverse curve. Working in the reverse curve is not a good thing to do. You want to stay out of that reverse curve as much as possible. So this one gives you a pretty good hint at what to do. This one, not so. This one, a little bit of a hint here that is showing, because it has a little bit of arc right here on the side, it's showing a little extra puff right in here. And we eliminated where the louvers were by cutting that section out and using some of the flat from over here to create this flat over here. We just kind of bonded it in there. So Mark made up all these nice profile gauges, and remember what the flexible shape pattern does is not only does it give you a guide to where you have to shrink or stretch, or where you have to do the work, but it also indexes the exact perfect location of where all these gauges go. And these gauges are nothing more than an external buck. So I've got it all marked now, but as I work the panel, a lot of this will get erased and I'll have to remark it again. But I know here is where my reverse curve is, and I've got to arrange that. I'm going to bring it up like this, and in order to get that reverse curve, whenever you have a reverse curve present, generally what you're going to be doing is stretching on the edges of that reverse curve. By stretching on the edges of that reverse curve, that will put this desirable curve this way, which is only like 3/16 of an inch or so. It's very minor. And you're going to have to stretch out on this edge. That will create the reverse curve. But then you're going to have to come inboard, because that has the area value that's stronger right in here. That's that outer roll out there. And you'll have to pump that up. But that will not upset the balance that you've created already here in the reverse curve. And you'll have to put a little area value over in here too. And that will give a little bit of tension to the panel, but a lot of it is roll this way too. So let's see if we can do that without screwing up. And of course, this is the first time I've ever made this panel too. If you make a panel multiple times, you learn where the problems are. And generally I don't throw any panel away, because as you probably watched in video 9, I overdeveloped number 9 a little bit in this section. 9 was overdeveloped a little bit right here, and then I used the heat and the slapper to shrink that down. Now I could have wheeled the edges and undid some of that extra material. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to wheel this and see if we can get a little reverse going in the panel here. So we'll take the panel. I cleaned the wheel up before we went on camera. I used my little technique where you turn the wheel with the cordless drill with a little drum sander attachment on it, that the rubber turns the wheel, and then you sand it with a 6-inch rotary sander. So I got really light pressure here, and I'm going to wheel this on the edge a little bit, and I'm going to lift up on it. And what happens is, as you wheel this, you'll notice that, see how this edge starts to go wavy and wonky on you. So that's good. And what you want to do is, once you see that, you bring it inboard a little bit. And I'm lifting up at the same time here. So I'm creating that little bit of curve that I want here. I might only do it on one. Well, I'll do it on a little bit on the other side too. It won't hurt. Remember, anything you do is correctable. You always have to remember that a finished panel doesn't have any odd anomalies in it. It's always pretty smooth. So if you're making something that's got all these anomalies and bumps and stuff, you're probably doing something wrong. So you try to avoid that as much as possible. So we just did that little bit of wheeling there, and that creates a situation where it gives a little strength to the panel. And now you can see we've got a little rock in that reverse curve area, which is what we want. Now we need rock this way, but we don't have yet. So we got to put that in. The flexible shape pattern is not really going to help us out a whole bunch as far as giving us an indicator, other than it's a little puffy right in here. So we know we got to work a little bit in there. So that's what we're going to do next. We'll puff this up a little bit right here, and we'll see if we can get a rock going this way. And then we're going to probably set the arrangement on it, working on what I call the fulcrum block. Yeah. After, we're going to take and use one of my fulcrum blocks on my post dolly, and we'll bend it right on the reverse curve. So I got to mark the reverse curve on the other side because we'll be pushing down on it. So now we're just going to puff this up a little bit right here. Okay, so now I'm just putting a little bit of area in this section here. Now remember, when you're watching other videos on YouTube or you're on a forum or something, you're going to see probably a very accomplished shaper, and they're doing a panel, and they're doing it a lot different than I'm doing. And then you watch another one, and they're doing it different than I'm doing. So the lesson there is there's different avenues to get to the same location. And this is a method that I've developed that I'm very comfortable with. I really admire the Italian method. This has got a little bit of English with it, and this is all stretching panel, and with a little blend of this and a little blend of that, I've developed my way of doing it. And as you get enough experience under your belt, you're going to be developing your way of doing it. It's very similar. I love music. My daughter's a musician. She's a singer, and so I watch a lot of what she's doing, and I've followed music since the 60s, and every guitar player is a little different. And you can't directly compare one guitar player with another and say this guitar player is doing it wrong and this guitar player is doing it right. It's just the way their style has developed, and that's what makes the greatness of this whole craft, is that you can learn a little bit from this one, a little bit from that one, and then you learn a little bit yourself, and you put it together. And then there's others that, you know, they're using a hammer forming technique, which is a production technique, where you're making some form of die. It's not a cast iron die like it seems like the Taiwanese have been making replacement quarter panels from GTOs and Chevy Impalas and all that for years and years and years, and you find them at the automotive swap meets, and you see this entire quarter panel and it's $400. Well, they've got dedicated die sets, and they're stamping them out by the hundreds, and now they're so sophisticated they can actually make a whole complete car. Their die technique is not as good as the original OEM dies, which would be tool steel. A lot of times they're using a cast ductile iron die, or they're using some kind of epoxy or Kirkside or something like that. There's various methods to get to the same point, even in the die industry. And then the low end of it is when you use pourable dies like epoxies or fiberglasses, and you can create a hammer form with those, and by hammer forming you can get to 90 or 95% of where the panel needs to be in a pretty rapid clip. But it's really not practical. That method is not practical for the average enthusiast who's working out of a two-car garage. He's not going to spend a year or two making hammer forms so that he can make a new Cobra body. So you have to choose a method that works well for you. I prefer to make wire forms. I think the wire form process in itself is a beautiful way to create the shape that you want to replicate, especially if you don't have something to copy. Like with this Jaguar hood, we have a really pretty good example that had a little bit of damage to it, but insignificant amount, and nothing that would impair its the value of the surface quality. So it's a great thing to be able to have a model to copy like that, and the flexible shape pattern allows you, with the gauges, allows you to easily copy that model. And you know, I've got my critics that are on YouTube, and they've said, oh, it's taking you so long, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm not in a race, number one. It's not a commercial venture. This is more of a teaching exercise. And I really don't even intend to sell the hood, so there's no monetary value here whatsoever. If I was making it for a customer, yes, your incentive is to get it done as fast as possible and as good as possible, but that depends on the individual. Some people are a little more picayune than others. I tend to be a little crazy on the perfectionism. You can criticize my work now saying, oh, there's a few little spots that are not good because your technique was terrible, and I've heard that in my comment section. But all those spots will be picked up, and I'll polish this thing when it's done. I want it to be a piece that I can bring around to different shows and stuff to help promote my classes. That's pretty much the basic reason why I'm doing it. And so that's enough talking. Let's continue on. So I got a little puff in here. Now it might be too much. It might be too little. I don't know. Now the flexible shape pattern, we'll put it on there and see what that says. Generally that gives me a good indicator. So one of the lessons is not to do too much at a time. You got to make baby steps. And if you overdo it, you'll get a loose edge here. This edge is showing a little bit of looseness here now, but I don't think it's a problem yet. It's very easy to fix. I just got to work on the edge a little bit to take that out. So it's laying nicely here, and it's laying pretty good here. The only spot I see is anomaly is right here, which can easily be fixed. So I think we're in good shape now. Now, as far as the reverse curve goes, now reverse curves are, oh, I got a little divot right here. Oh, there we go. It's just loose there. As far as reverse curves go, one of the cool things is once you master the reverse curve, is that to create the reverse curve, you can, or you should, stretch the edges, and that'll create the condition of the reverse curve. Or you can shrink the center too. There's a couple different ways to shrink the center. On this particular project, we won't be shrinking the center, but you can actually shrink the center too. So say you have a situation where you have the reverse curve and you don't create enough reverse curve. When you have that situation, then you have to do a little bit more work on the edges to create that reverse curve. But say you did the reverse curve work too much, and now you have too much reverse curve. Well, it's easy to take it away. All you got to do is work in this area right here where the reverse curve is with the wheel, and that'll take away the too much and bring it back to where you need to be. So you have this ability to add and subtract always. You've got to come to the conclusion that, like I said before, metal is clay, except that metal is just a more reluctant clay. And you need the tools to work the metal. The tools are quite varied. You've got Planischen hammers, English wheels, and power hammers, and all kinds of stuff. How you get there doesn't matter. That's going to depend on your budget level, how much you want to budget for it. Not how much you can afford, but how much you want to budget for it. And as far as the time element goes, most of the students that I get are hobbyists, and they're not in this big race to get their car done in a month or so, and it's not an economic thing. It's more of a therapy for them. A lot of people get really caught up in their jobs, and you need a little escape from your regular job, which might be sitting behind a computer screen all day, and to go out and work with your hands is great therapy. And to master making a piece of metal do what you want it to do, there's nothing better. And I see students like that all the time. I've had all kinds of professionals, doctors and lawyers and all kinds of professionals, and they love doing this stuff. So it's a great therapeutic thing. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to move those marks to the back side here, because we're going to put it on the fulcrum block, and we're going to try to bend this. It's going to be giving me a fight because this is that really stiff aluminum. We'll do it a little incremental, and I'm just trying to dot that line, looking at both sides at once here, so I transfer it over. So there's my line, and I'll bend it a little bit and then verify it on the other side. So if I'm off, I just adjust the line, but I think that's pretty close. And then we'll see where we're at. So we'll go over to the fulcrum block. I'm going to put some gloves on, and we'll bend this a little bit. The fulcrum block, I make these little ends. This is 1-inch cold roll shafting, and it allows you to squeeze it there. You can go higher if you want, or lower. And it's a nice little receiver. It's much better than the old Pexto style square ones. I've had those and I don't have them anymore. So let's see if we can push this down here. We might not go down all the way yet. We'll just get it started. And let's verify we're on the line here. Yeah, it looks pretty good. If I'm on the wrong spot, is that a disaster? No, it's not a disaster at all. I just move it over, that's all. Okay, so look at that, we got a big bump right here. Oh my God, that's no good. That's the end of the world. We're going to have to throw this panel away. No, don't worry about that. That'll go away. We're in the early stages of development, so there's number 45. And we'll see what this curve looks like. We've induced a little bit of the curve with that fulcrum block. And now we're going to put some in with the wheel. So that one's pretty good. So let's take it over to the wheel, and we'll induce a little bit with the wheel here now. Alright, now what we're doing is we're inducing that roll with the wheel here, and we're using the wheel as an arrangement tool. We're putting that roll in. Now we know the roll is supposed to be there. It just popped. And it also has a little bit of area change in there too. So let's see what we got now. What we have now. So now it's starting to look a little bit like the panel, but we're still far away. Alright, that's showing a little bit of looseness here, but the true test to see if there's looseness is, I call this pinching an inch. If you can grab a little extra material there, then it's probably loose, and I might have to stretch that edge a little bit. That's what the case looks like here. I might have to do that. None of this is conclusive yet because we're so early in the game. That's showing a little bit more rock than we need, but that'll go down. That's showing a little more rock than we need. That'll go down. So let me see what the gauge says. That needs a lot more, both arrangement up and arrangement this way. So I got to go up first and then over this way. And whenever you change this arrangement, it changes this curve here too. So let's go back to the fulcrum block and we'll give it another little push over here. And we'll try pushing close to where that line is and double checking to make sure you're on the mark. Always use blankets on your, when you're bending. Always use blankets on your benches too, because aluminum likes to scratch, and you don't want to scratch your aluminum all up. So it's all incremental, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, let it add up. Don't try to do too much at once. And if you push too hard, your rotator cuff will bark at you too. Ask me how I know. So let's see what we got now. Okay, so I can't go up anymore because I'm hitting over here. So I got to bring that down some more. Let's go back in the wheel. I could put it in the fulcrum block too. We'll do it in the wheel though. You know, I was mentioning those critics. I've had a few critics. Oh, it's going too slow. Oh, you're doing it wrong. I'll tell you, I love the critics. I love them. Keep criticizing. Criticism makes everybody better. So, there's nothing wrong with criticism. Now, there's malicious criticism. That's they just wanted to destroy you. I don't think that's the case, but maybe on some of them. And then there's criticism that's constructive criticism. So actually the critics are a very positive thing. It's almost impossible in any human activity not to have some form of criticism. Somebody's always snickering or making comments somewhere. Now there's malicious criticism and then there's constructive criticism. The malicious criticism shows you what the intent of some of the people are, and the constructive criticism also shows you what the intent is. They want you to get better. So I always welcome constructive criticism. Everybody should, and just any endeavor in human activity, because you're always making mistakes. Life is a series of mistakes, and you're always correcting. And if you get really good, you make less and less mistakes, but you're still making mistakes. So here we are with the panel, and we got the gauges, and these little index marks are very vital, because if I put that like this, oh geez, it looks pretty good, but I'm about a ½ inch off on that index mark. Now I will double check that index mark, because sometimes you make mistakes and the index mark could be in the wrong spot and it throws you off. So it's telling me that I have to move that reverse curve line, or where the transition happens, over to here a little bit, which I might do. I have to first verify that, which I'll go to the source, back to the Jaguar hood, and see what it says. Now 44 is actually looking pretty good. It's got the index mark lined up, and the value for the reverse curve is looking pretty good right there. 45, we'll get 45. The old 6 looks like the 5. I gotta change that so I don't get this confused again. 45. So we'll see what 45 says. 45 says I gotta move it. It's not that bad, but it needs to move a little bit. So in 46 I looked at a little bit earlier, and that seemed to be fine. So I'm going to move that line over just a touch. Let's check my red line. Oh yeah, my red line probably is off a little bit here. So let's see, I got to move this way. So I'm going to move it over to here. Just this front section. I think the back section's pretty good. And go to 44 again. See, I need a lot more roll over in here. So push that on the fulcrum block too. So we'll get this a little bit better. There's a lot of ripply stuff going on right here. This is all going to have to be worked out. Not a problem. Like I said, everything is fixable. When we're done, we want this to look really, really nice. And it'll conform to all the gauges. The flexible shape pattern will sit on there nice. And it'll be ready for the louvering process. And I think I will try to cut the louvers right in situ on here. I'll be able to locate them with the flexible shape pattern by cutting out that section that we made here. You can see it's a different color. You should be able to pick it up. That's where the louvers will go. And we're actually going to move the louvers over a little bit to get them away from that little radius that goes up into the power hump there, the bulge in the middle of the hood. And that'll allow us easier access to planish that weld out. So let's try to move this line, and we'll try to get a little more curve going in over here. We can actually bring the gauges over to the fulcrum block. So I'm trying to move that valley over just a touch. That. Let's see what it says. 36. Oh boy, that's a lot better. Look at that. And then right in the center where the most gap is, that's where you have to do the most work. So I'm just going to give that a little push right there. And that's getting pretty close. Looks like I still need a little bit more adjustment of moving that valley, but let's see what 44 says now. Okay, so 44 says that I need actually to bring it back up this way a little bit, so I'm going to push a little harder here, right here. You kind of just throw your weight into it. There's a bunch of ways to do this too. This is the way I've found that works really good for me. I also use my tipping wheel. I can tip that in with a tipping wheel, but that generally will stretch it a little bit. This isn't going to stretch it. So go back to 36. Okay, I'm a little overdone there now, so I got to bring that down a little bit. Maybe my strength is coming back because this Chinese aluminum is moving a little better. I hated being sick. Oh man, it just kept going on and on and on. I still work though. I never miss a day. I had a great grandfather that worked 50 years at a company in Worcester, Mass. 50 years he never missed a day or was late for a day or sick for 50 years. I can't claim that record. Alright, so it looks like I got to bring that up just a little bit there. Alright, so we got the arrangement set pretty good. Now let's check to see what our area value is doing. We had about a 3/8 rock or so on the panel in the reverse curve. And what do we got here now? We got probably about what we need. That doesn't look too bad. And we probably got a little bit more than we need right there. Let's see what the flexible shape pattern tells us. We put that on. That's all sitting pretty nice, except for that one little spot there. I might have to relieve that a little bit there. So I'm going to work that edge just a little bit. Let's see what that does. If I work it too much, not a problem. We can straighten it out. You're not going to make big giant steps. You're taking baby steps all the time. That's one of the dangers, is all the students, they want stuff to happen really fast. Well, it's like cooking. You can't make a wonderful meal in 5 minutes. You end up with fast food, not exceptional food. I can't pinch an inch there, so that looks pretty good. Now let's see what the gauges are doing this way here. 52. Always look for your index mark. 52. I stretched that a little bit, so and I got a loose edge there, so I'm gonna have to come inboard a little bit to take that away. So that's getting a little misreading there. This one is 53. That's in the middle of the valley here. Where's the index mark for 53? I don't see it. Well, let me see. It goes this way. The index mark is missing. But it's fitting pretty good because this is the rear, that's the front. So that reverse curve valley is looking really good. And number 49. That's showing a little bit strong right here, but not bad. When you push down on it, it's about conforming. So, looking at the clock here, I think we're about 45 minutes or so. And I'm going to work just a few more minutes. I'm going to get this loose edge. You can see this edge is active here. That's where I stretched it initially. I'm going to come inboard here and pump this just a little bit. And we'll get that done. And we're not going to be finishing this panel tonight. We'll just finish that. And really glad you guys have been waiting for me. And I'm back. Our goal is to do 2 videos a week, but we're really busy, and when we're sick and really busy, it's very difficult to do. So hopefully we're back on track and we'll get those videos out. Now, I want to tell you what I want to try to do is, we're doing this aluminum hood, but I also want to do some other stuff. And the other stuff would be some of the projects that have been started by students and they're not finished to the degree that I would like them to be. So I think I'm going to use them as an example to how you finish where it's at. So I have a 3.5-year-old grandson, and we started this nice little go-kart body project. Maybe we can pan over there. Mark, can you bring the camera over? This was a class project, and I think I did a video on this too, where most of the class was beginners, and we designed the body and made the wire form and started making all the panels, and we got one weld done. It was a real quick weld. It's pretty fat and it's got to be ground a lot. But all these panels will need a little tuning, and I'm going to make this fodder for my YouTube channel, and I think that'll be a good example of a real doable project for somebody that's getting interested in this craft of shaping. And there's, you know, a lot more than just shaping. It's the fact that you're using the wire form, and unfortunately I won't be able to show you how to do the wire form, but we will do wire forms at some point. But we're going to continue on with the aluminum hood and aluminum bonnet for the Jaguar, and we're going to be starting to do tuning these panels and welding them together, what's involved. I'll try to show as much as possible, but I think that's going to be a beautiful little project. And this is a go-kart frame that I found at the scrapyard up the street. It was a freebie. Backed up to the pile and see this go-kart frame, and I asked him, I says, hey, can I buy that? And he said, ah, just take it. So it had a gas motor on it. I'm going to put a cordless drill as the power source. I think that'll be sufficient for a 3.5-year-old. So the panel that we're working on the bonnet, I put a little bit of area in here. We're going to just try to get this loose edge out. We 45 it through here a little bit, and we'll call this 10A, and we'll be back next week, and we'll get 10B, and we'll get this panel further developed, maybe finished, except for the louvers. Alright, so I just pumped that a little bit with the wheel, and it just popped a little bit, so that tightened up that edge a little bit. Again, now say I wheel this a little too strong, not a problem. We just correct it by wheeling the edge or shrink the center. Both will do the same result. Now generally I don't run over to a shrinker and shrink that edge. That edge is going to be trimmed off anyways. It's still a little live right there. Wherever it's live, it still needs a little more area right inboard from there. So I'm going to put a little more right here, and it might not be perfect, but not a problem. So I'm going to wheel the long way. This is very low pressure too, and I'm going to pull down on it because this has a little curve to it. Has a little curve this way. I might have put too much in this way, so I gotta take a little bit of that out. Now a lot of times what the students will do is they'll be using the wrong wheel, too high a crown wheel to do stuff, and they make all kinds of wheel marks and everything. And the general rule of thumb is if you're making any mark that's visible on the surface of your panel, you're doing something wrong. What are you doing wrong? You got the wrong wheel, the wrong pressure. That'll yield, the wrong wheel or the wrong pressure will yield a mark on the surface. If there's a reverse in here, the edge of the wheel will bite on the top. The top wheel will bite. You'll see bite marks from that. If you have too much of a radius and you try to go through a lower crown wheel like this, it'll bite on the outer edges of the bottom anvil, and you'll see marks. As soon as you see marks, you stop immediately and you correct the problem. So we've got this panel going. It's looking pretty good. It's got a little wonkiness still right here, just a little bit. And we'll check it with the gauges. We'll make sure that reverse curve is dialed in. We've got a little ripply effect here where we're using the wheel to pull it down, and it causes what I call little fulcrum marks. Light pressure through there will take those all out. You do it at a little bit of an angle and it kind of washes all those little marks out. And we'll dial it in with the gauges, and that'll be next week. And like I said, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if this is the first time you've watched one of my videos. And I haven't been answering any of the comments. I just haven't had the energy for it. I'm going to try to go back and give some attention to those comments if I can afford to spend the time, because I'm really busy all the time. So keep the comments coming. Subscribe. Thank you. It's Wray Schelin from Proshaper Sheet Metal in Charlton, Massachusetts.